What is going on, my true crime family? Another edition of, you guessed it, you can't make this BS up. I got some huge stories coming your way. Multiple recordings that I am knocking down this evening for you guys on the free podcast side, and also for the Patreon and the subscriptions for Spotify and Apple Podcasts. I'm adding those as well. Now, please believe it is very reasonable to follow us on the podcast side of Spotify. The extra episodes are $2.99 a month. When you go on Apple is $5.99, along with the Patreon is also $5.99. I have all those links on there as well. You'll like the Patreon because on the Patreon, you actually get to see other cases in the news on the regular, and you get to talk on there and discuss other cases as well. Now, if you have a case that you want me to investigate and to have on the podcast based upon the season that we are doing, please don't hesitate to hit all my social media. I don't mind answering those questions and looking into it, okay? Just please hit me in my inbox. Don't go on my comment section trying to bring it up because it gets cluttered in the comments, okay? And speaking of comments, please, guys, please leave a comment. It helps us out with the show. Now, there is other news to talk about on the show this week. We have had a total now of the following plays on Spotify because of you guys' help, on you guys' support, everybody loving the new things that we are doing right now. All platform plays. We have got 36,121 total plays. Yes. We also got on Spotify itself. We have accumulated a lot of hours. The discovery has been insane. People came out to support. We're still getting a lot of people searching for our content, and man, we appreciate that. It helps us out a lot. And hey, man, thank you very much for supporting our cause, for keeping the show out there to the people. I mean, I'm blessed, man. I really am. I'm very humble. Started the podcast since August and did not know that it was going to take off like this. So yes, we are blessed. So anyway, y'all know this season is the season for killer wives. Wives who murder for love, greed, or revenge. That has been the staple of this season here. And this case that we got tonight is nothing different. I learned about this case from actual Snap. Now, this case is very horrible. This is the murder case of Kristen Durgin. Now, I'm going to break it down like I always do with these type of cases. I like to keep it direct, straight to the point. Have you ever been in a situation where you constantly took things for granted? And you take things for granted so much to the point that it becomes a complacent cycle. It is like breathing, literally, but like oxygen. What happens when you wind up letting your ability to take things for granted impose on your actual livelihood. And to the point that instead of you learning from your mistakes and take accountability, you allow other people into your circle that are just as vicious as you to help you not only destroy the most innocent person that you love, but everyone around you, including yourself. This is the story of Kristen Durgin, who allowed her selfishness, her inability to take accountability, causing her to crash out. Let's jump into the story. Now, there's not too much to tell about Kristen Durgin in her early life, except for Kristen Durgin was a young lady who came from a rich family. But we do have a lot to talk about her husband, who also gets burnt because of her selfishness. And this is James Jim Durgin. Now, James Jim Durgin was originally born in Salute. That was around about the 19th of December, 1970, to the parents of Betty Joe Durgan and his father, Larry Durgan. Now, Betty Joe passed away sometime while Jim, which is what his family called him, was young. So his father mostly helped raise him, which was Larry Durgan. And later in life, I guess his companion or the woman that he started dealing with later on, Miss Marilyn Smith. Now, James had a sister named Pamela that grew up with him as well. Now, it doesn't really say who was the oldest, whether it was him or his sister, but I do know that that's the only sibling that he had. Now, when Jim got around about out of high school and graduated, he decided that he wanted to go into University of Phoenix, Arizona. Now, went to the University of Phoenix. I did 1 year of it. Found out it was nothing that he wanted to do. So he started to become a part of an electrical company that his dad had connections with. Now, I forgot the name of this electrical company per se, but I do know that he got started in there in Arizona and he took off. Now, while he was taking off and doing well in Arizona, this kid was really shining back then. We're talking about by the time the early 90s hit, this is a young man between 20, 21, 22. He's making a lot of money. He's making almost 90 grand a year, okay? Doing the engineering cabling of this company. Well, I guess like any young man, you get to that point where you want to share it with a girlfriend or someone that you think that could possibly be a potential suitor for a family. And that's when Kristen Durgin came into play. Kristen Durgin met Kristen, at the time was named Kristen Drake, met Jim at a blind date setup. And before you know it, the blind date turned into something where it became more and more serious. Now, I will show you a picture of Jim. 1 second, because I don't want to keep telling you, and I will give you some pictures of how Jim and him and her were when they first got together. This is a small picture, but give you an idea. Give me 1 moment to post this up here. I'm going to try to enhance it as much as I can so you get an idea of how it should look. All right. So back then, this is Jim, and this is the blonde bombshell Kristen Durgin that he fell for. She was astonishing, good looking, nice looks, nice figure. Jim felt like he had it all. So later down the line, Jim and Kristin married. When they got married, they had 2 kids, young family, and Jim is just killing it. And so while Jim is doing his thing, making that money and all that stuff, they decide to move over to Colorado, which is Canyon City area of Colorado. Now, when they got over there to that area, this is when they were at the 100,000 mark, making money, hands over fist, life is good. But there's some secrets that Jim's beautiful wife was hiding from him. See, Kristen had a problem. She had an addiction. And no, it's not drugs, but it's just as bad as drugs. It was gambling. Now, Kristen has been gambling since the age of 16. It all started with her parents going to these casinos. And when she was 16, she did not look like a 16-year-old. She looked very mature for her age. So when she went in these casinos, no ID, no nothing, fun. And that's how it all started. Now, because of this, Kristen being that type of young lady that likes to chase that high of gambling, she didn't know when to cut it off. She had a real problem of chasing that gambling high. And because of this, she ran up debt in the marriage. Now, the first time that the debt got ran up in the marriage, allegedly, from the research I got and received, Kristen ran up about 40 grand. And while she had ran up about 40 grand of debt in gambling with the money that's being sent to her by Jim, she was being reckless with the children. She would go and gamble for hours, sometimes leave the children in the parking lot in the car by themselves. There was an occasion where the Child Protective Services was called because of the behavior that she was displaying, leaving these children unattended. So Jim, at his wits' end, stressed out, annoyed. Now this is going into the late 90s, going into the early 2000s. It's like, yo, we can't be doing this, man. Like, this is not good. Yeah, we gotta look at another plan here. So, like any man who's trying to salvage his family and is trying to get this all together in his head, he's like, listen, you can't do this. Like, you got to get help. You got to get some kind of help or something. So that first time, that's when James was basically removing himself from the situation and left. I don't know how long, but he came back, and she decided that she would go to rehab. So she goes to rehab for 30-day program treatment. She comes back out of the 30-day program treatment. She tells Jim, yes, I'm cured. I'm going to be on the straight and narrow. You can trust me with this money. I'm going to put the kids first. I'm going to pay the bills. So Jim once again goes and trusts her because this is what she says she's going to do. He has faith that she's cured. But again, that was another lie. Once again, she was gambling again. This time, I think she ran it up to almost a little over 100 grand. So Jim's like, yo, man, this is too much, man. This is like you're doing this again. So he left, separates. Again, he gives her another chance. She tells him that she's going to go and get herself straightened out again. She changed. Well, Jim kind of took it with a grain of salt, but he knew he had to take care of these children and look out for these children. So that's when Jim decided, you know what, the best thing for me to do is I need someone to reach out to. I need a woman's touch. I'm always traveling. I'm making all this money, but as much money as I'm making, it's getting like thrown away by my wife, who thinks gambling is more important than being a family. So Jim goes on this online dating thing and he meets a woman. And the woman he meets is Tara Barber. See if I can find quick. Give me 1 second here. See if I can find a picture of her for you guys right quick. I don't think I have a picture of her. Actually, I know it's Tara Barber. I think I found a picture of her, of them two actually together. But anyway, either way it goes, hold on a second. All right, I'm putting it right in. Sorry, I got a lot of pictures I'm trying to bring up for you guys to see so I can load this while I tell this story. Now, that was Tara back then. I don't know how she looks today, but that was Miss Tara Barber. Now, Tara Barber at the time was a single mom trying to figure life out. So she is trying to navigate this thing, and she meets this guy, and she's like blown away by the character of Jim Durgin. Jim is a nice guy. He's all about family. He loves his children. And he just loves life. But there was one thing that Jim did not tell Miss Barber, Tara Barber. He did not tell Tara that he was married and he had kids. He just played the role as this guy who works hard and was into Tara. So for about 3 years, this is what Jim did to kind of, I guess, get himself through the situation with his wife. He would spend time with the wife and the kids, but when he was on the road, he gave all his attention to Tara. So he went back and forth doing this for a long period of time. 3 years. Until finally he started noticing that Tara was really dropping hints that she wanted to be Mrs. Durgan. And there's a problem with that. He still was married to a woman that's already carrying the Durgan last name. And also, he already had kids. So he had to sit Tara down and tell her the truth. And he just told Tara, listen, I know you feeling me. I'm feeling you. I've always adored you and love you, but I have a secret. I have a wife and kids at home. Now, Tara was blown because it's like, wait a minute. You gave me a fairy tale and you told me this? Yeah, it was a lot for her to deal with. But Tara, being a woman of standard, a woman of value, a woman of quality, said, listen, I cannot be the other woman, not going to be the other woman. This is over. This really crushed Jim because Jim really wanted to make things work with Tara while he tried to navigate what he was going to do with his wife. But Tara was like, yo, I did not sign up for this because this is not what I do. You know, I am a woman who wants to be the only woman in her man's life. I'm not taking a back seat to being second. So after that, the relationship was over. And you could tell that this man was definitely going back to his wife. Now, while Jim was going back to his wife, Jim was not happy at all. Let's get this straight. But he know that he messed up. He did not tell this woman the truth from the get-go, and this was his punishment. And this is what he had to live with. So while Jim is going through all of this and figuring out his life, he decided to just focus on work and family once again. While he is doing that, well, you already know what's happening on the other side of the coin. That's right, Kristin is still messing up. Kristin is out here just spending money and gambling. Gambling. Telling James what he wants to hear, but Jim what he wants to hear, and gambling. So finally, Jim finally caught on again, because you know a gambler don't understand that you can't hide things forever. And when he realized this time this girl has done something that he was not even expecting that could possibly be done. This girl ran up 200 grand worth of debt. Yeah. Let's just put it to you this way. Jim was livid. I mean, he was livid. He had to do everything he can to make sure he wouldn't commit something like this. But that's cool. He left, said it was over, was going to really go through with the divorce proceedings. But he sat there, he thought about it. He knew his kids were young. He knew that he grew up without a mom. He knew how important the dad was. So he came back to the fold and told her again, all right, I'm giving you another chance, Chris. But this time we're going to do it my way. Because I think that the reason why you are doing all of this unnecessary debt is because you out here got too much idle time on your hand. So that's when he told her, this is what I'm going to need you to do. I'm going to need you to get a job and help out with these damn bills. Now, let me remind you, Kristin has not been in a situation where she has to be accountable or put in the work to do stuff, because she was born with a platinum spoon in her mouth because of her dad's wealth. So this was the first time hearing that she was going to be held accountable for the mistakes that she has made. But she knew that she needed her husband's money because he has also provided her with a comfortable lifestyle. So Kristin's response was, yes, I'll do it. I will make sure that whatever you need me to do, I'll do it. I'll work. So, as soon as that was stated, Kristin got a job at the local Pizza Hut, working, while also her husband was out there working. And it seemed like for a while, things were doing good. She was working at the Pizza Hut. Bills were getting caught up and getting paid. And the level of stress that her husband was feeling was starting to simmer down. So, in other words, Jim was like, all right, I think I got my marriage back on track and I think we'll be okay. Well, that was far from the truth. Because while Tara was working at the Pizza Hut, Tara met a young, impressionable young man. This young man was young, blonde-headed, looked like the American boy next door. And that was Andrew Tanner. Now, Andrew Tanner came from a very good family. And as Andrew got to know Kristin, Andrew found out that him and Kristin had a lot in common. Now, before I get too much involved in that, I also got to understand that during this marriage as well, that Kristin was also diagnosed with bipolar disorder after being married for the first 2 years. Now, this is also another reason why she would be on impulse to always gamble. Because when you have bipolar disorder, there is a lot of impulse involved. Now, I'm going to continue to keep on tell you what's going on. So anyway, when she met Andrew and she found out that Andrew was just like her, loved to gamble, young, attractive, saying all the things that an older woman who is 19 years older than this guy would ever hear, she had to have it. And before you know it, they go into the casinos, and from the casinos, Andrew finally sealed the deal to make Kristin feel like she was the baddest woman in the world. That's right, because the affair was on. Now, Kristin started getting reckless with this affair with Andrew. You know, you're already on shaky ground when you're married. Your husband done told you one more, he's out. Then let's get it, don't get it twisted. I know a lot of people going to say, well, Joel, Andrew was cheating. Jim was cheating himself and still even had possibly feelings for this other woman that he had been with for 3 years. I understand, but he was really trying to focus on the marriage. Like she was supposed to be focusing on the marriage. So either way it goes, both of them are wrong. I'm just saying she just had more to lose than he did. But let's get back to the basic of the story. So it got to the point that Kristin started getting comfortable with Andrew coming around her kids and her every night while her husband, Jim, was on these business trips. And Jim was like clueless until one day Jim came home. And when Jim came home, lo and behold, who does he see in his house? Basically, they almost in the act with his wife. You guessed it, Andrew Tanner. Boy, it got lit. That's right. They said Jim was ready to put hands on this young guy, Andrew. And I don't know what all went down, but I was going to give you a synopsis of probably what was said. Something to the effect of Jim, his version. Yo, man, I don't know who the hell you is or who you think you are, but you in my house, player. You got to go. You ain't got no business with your young ass in here. Now, you can go the easy way or you can go out the hard way. You make a choice, young man. And I can guarantee you how it went with young Andrew, the young whippersnapper. Man, I ain't going nowhere. Okay, player? In fact, the last time I checked, you ain't never home anyway. So basically, this is her house. So I'm going to stand right here, right now. So if you bad enough to move me out your so-called house, do it. Please make my day. Because I'm ready to die for this shit. What you ready to do? Again, this is for entertainment purposes only. And that's what I think they probably said. But either way it goes, I guess at this point, I could probably see in Jim's mind, he was probably like, fuck it. I don't need to be here. Why am I here? Why am I wasting my time with this? This is all foolishness. You know what? You can have a dog. And I guarantee you that's probably what he told that young boy, but something to the effect of, you know what? You can have her ass, man. You want this problem, you want the bipolarness, the gambling, not having no money, figuring life out, player. That's on you. But I know this. Don't get too comfortable with my kids, because sooner or later, they'll be coming with me too. I guarantee you that it probably went down like that after he walked out. But either way it goes, that was it. It was the final straw for Jim. Jim was done. Jim was ready to leave the relationship. And that's exactly what Jim did. Jim bounced on Mrs. Kirsten. And she was cool with it because Kristen had who she wanted to have. She had her new hot young lover, her boy toy, the pizza driver guy, Andrew Tanner. But at the time, Jim got him a hotel in the local town of Kansas City. Now on the weekends he came home, spent time with his kids, but that soon started to become very rocky too, because over time Kristen became very how can I put this? Very bold. Bold to the point that she decided to move Andrew Tanner in, who they would call Andy. Forgot to tell you that Andrew Tanner is also called Andy. Now, when Jim saw this, Jim basically was like, all right, I already know the gameplay here. I'm about to put the stop to it, but there's one more thing I got to get straight. And Jim could not get out of his head this one person. This person that he has been pining for, can't get out of his head for the longest. And that was Tara Barber. So he made the drive to Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And he decided to tell the love of his life, Tara Barber, that he wanted another shot with their relationship. And that, yeah, he had actually filed for divorce. At first, Tara was kind of skeptical, like any woman, because, you know, hey, she got burned. Didn't tell her last time. But when she saw that he was really serious and he was moving forward, Tara told him how much she prayed for this day, how much she wanted him to be in her life. He was the love of her life, and she was ready to go to the next chapter with him. So after Jim got that secured, Jim decided that it was time to cut Kristin off. No more giving you extra money, and you got this young all-American male in the house with you. Nah, I ain't doing it. I ain't doing it. So anyway, so while that is going on, Andrew was Jim was getting very annoyed too that Andrew was a convicted criminal. And not to mention he being a criminal, he also had guns around his children. That was just a no-no. So it was pretty much, you could tell that this man was tired of the BS. But anyway, while all of this is going on, things were getting real heated. Because now Jim had cut off this money. The divorce was supposed to be finalized, where he had told, now in the divorce, he had hooked up. He said, listen, you get half of my 401k. You get to, with the house that you're staying in, you can live in the house long the kids under 18. But once they get into college, or prefer what college they're going to, you got to sell the house and take that money and put in a trust fund. That was it. That's all that she was taking care of. But I think that there was other things that was in the way. And you're going to find that out later, what made them feel like, yeah, that's not enough. Because when you get addicted to gambling, money like that is child's play. You want the real deal in the money affair. So either way it goes, things took a tragic turn. And this happened in July the 11th, 2008, which is crazy because that's a little bit after their anniversary, which is July the 3rd. But we're going to continue. Now, she said that her husband had been missing. So when that happened, the officers started looking for the Jim. They found this car abandoned in the Lone Pine recreational area at the edge of Fremont County. Then, 8 days later, on July the 19th, 2008, the police found a body in the Arkansas River. This body had been bloated and disfigured and impossible to identify. The medical examiner used dental records to identify the body belonged to Jim. His autopsy report also showed blunt force trauma to the head and 2 bullet wounds in his skull. Now, investigators started looking at the spouse, closest to him, Kristen Durgin. They started finding out about her bipolarness, her gambling problem, things of that nature. But they also found something else. Found out that with her boyfriend, he had a past. And like anybody, they want to know what's going on. So 11 days later, the police had Andrew on July 22nd, 2008 for questioning. Now he clammed up and then he soon started looking guilty. And then he decided to invoke his right to counsel. And the police had to let him go, but they continued to look into him. They found his phone records. As they were looking into his phone records, they found a suspicious late night call, which is after 1 o'clock on the night of Jim disappeared. And the calls were to a man named Brian Folsom. Now he was a parolee. And Brian Folsom also was a meth head, and he had a lot of mental health issues. Let's put it to you this way. Brian Folsom wasn't the type of guy that you want to keep your back turned from. You want to keep your head on a swivel with this cat. Then they found out that Brian was an ex-employee at the pizza. And, they brought Brian in. And you know what? Brian broke down and started confessing. Talking about how he played a role in the murder. He said Andrew paid him money to kidnap Jim on July the 10th, 2008 from the Lone Pine Recreation Area and take him to a remote area in Fremont County called Dirty Gulch near Sotopoxy. Brian tied Jim to a tree with phone cables, handcuffed his hand to the tree, and duct taped his eyes and mouth shut. Now, I know you're going to ask, well, how was he able to get Brian to come with them? Well, this is what really went down on that. It came out in the trial that Kristin was the one that called her soon-to-be ex-husband, Jim, to come to this location because she said that her and the kids were stranded and she needed help with the vehicle. Now, Jim, she knew, living in Kansas City, where he was located at in the hotel. And he's a real family man, an alpha male. He's not going to have his children or even his ex-wife out there in no man's land without any kind of assistance. So he brings his vehicle, drive out there, I guess, to say, let me try to, get them home or whatever. Well, when he got there, that's when he ran into Brian Folsom. And when he ran into Brian Folsom, he knew this was a trap. He'd been set up. And as soon as Brian tied up this man to a tree and duct taped his eyes and mouth shut, that's when Brian got in touch with Andrew. It's like, yo, I got him up here. He's tied up. Everything else, it's all on you now. Well, Andrew got there and started taunting Jim. Taunting Jim like, hey, your kids. Let me give you an example of how he taunted this man allegedly that came out in court. Hey, man, didn't I tell you I would see you again? Didn't I tell you I would see you again? Your kid's gonna be calling me daddy now. Yeah, your soon-to-be ex-wife, she enjoy what I be doing to her behind closed doors. Way better than what you could do, you know what I mean, player? Yeah. Hey, let me ask you something right quick there, Jimbo. What you want to say to them kids before I take you out of this world right quick in a hurry? I just want you to tell them kids that I love them and they can be anything they put their minds to. Touching. Real touching. You know what, though? I'll be able to tell them that daily because I'm their daddy now. Pretty much, that's how that ended. After Brian went and tortured Jim, he took Jim out and then he disposed of the body. Kristen admitted all this, but she had her set of lies too. She said, now this time going on to August 28, 2008, she claimed in interrogation that it was Andrew not only killed Jim out of jealousy, but also about Jim had been trying to reconcile with her. She even went to say that they went on a vacation with the kids the week before he went missing, that they got intimate again. Now, this is where Mrs. Tara Barber spoke out against that and said that was just straight lie. Jim didn't have no intentions of getting with her, and she definitely know that Jim definitely didn't get involved intimate with her because Jim was over it all. He just wanted her to take that money, do what he asked, and keep it pushing. But the police also found out that Kristin was about to lose $500,000 if that divorce settlement went and got processed through their court. So while it wasn't processed yet, that's how she possibly encouraged her lover to do the things that he did. Well, after all this was said and done, about a year later, the first one to get sentenced was Brian Folsom. After he cooperated and testified against Andrew Andy Tanner, he was given 48 years in prison. Now, about 5 years later, he applied for post-conviction relief, but the motion was turned down in April of 2014. And he is still incarcerated in the Arkansas Valley Correctional Facility in Crowley County, Colorado. Now, right now, his estimated parole date is August 20th, 2040. He's got another 16 years to go if he get to see the light of day. Kristin, even though she testified against this her boy toy and did all the things that she did to try to get a better sentence, it didn't work out still good for her favor. She was sentenced to 54 years in jail. Now, Andrew Tanner, on the other hand, was sentenced to life imprisonment without the chance of parole. And he is currently in Lincoln County, Colorado. What can we learn from this case? What we can learn is that at the end of the day, you got to take accountability and you got to learn when to take selfishness off the table. And when you're destructive and you got another destructive person with you, all you gonna create is destruction. And that's what happened here, because now there's no winners. All of these folks are going to be in prison. Either they're going to die in there because they're never going to let them out, or they're going to be so old by the time they get out they're going to be ancient, alone and ancient. Let that sink in. Please. Thank y'all so much for joining me on this one. I want to give a shout out to, again, everyone that's been following me as well. I appreciate y'all so much. If you like more content like this, please join our Patreon. You can't make this BS up when you go on patreon.com and start searching for Patreon stuff. Subscribe once again to our Spotify or our Apple Podcasts, and also to please drop comments. Tell me, what do you think about this case here? Do you think that Andrew Tanner crashed out on a cougar that never loved him? Or do you think that the cougar crashed out because of her own selfishness? Please tell me what you think. Until then, I'm out.